Welcome, everyone, and I'd like to thank Courtney Sanborn for joining us today. Each year, the gallery presents work by member artists in a juried show, Arts Connect at Catamount Arts. And this year, in our Freed Family Gallery and Rankin Gallery, we have over 70 pieces on display for this year's juried show. And I'd like to introduce Courtney Sanborn, our second place winner in the juried show. Welcome, Courtney. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And congratulations on the prize.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful surprise. It was like an honor enough to be in the show. And I was like, really? Me? So that was really cool. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad, and the show is so amazing. And going into the gallery right now, and I encourage folks to come into our gallery in person. People can see all the work online in our slideshow, but coming in to see the pieces is really where it's at, especially where your work is concerned. So Courtney, tell me about your medium. It's embroidery. I was just downstairs looking at all three pieces that were accepted into the juried show, and talk to us about how you do this work.
So it's very dense. My process is very dense. So people kind of have a perception of embroidery, and it's like I think traditionally like historical, like decorative surface work on fabric, and that is I still very much stay within the traditional definition of embroidery. I'm not doing anything crazy, but it is very dense, and I bring in a narrative element. So all of my pieces are narrative, and they're actually autobiographical too. So I pick out these little episodes from my life and I kind of turn them into thread. And so my process, my physical process is really, it's just, I have like a library of stitches in my brain. And as I'm constructing these narratives, I just sort of dive in and start sewing. And I use whichever stitches I think would be the best descriptor of whatever I'm talking about. And the result is just like a painting. It's like a dense painting.
Mm-hmm. I love what you just said about a narrative. And to tell a narrative there's threads. You are literally using thread to thread your narrative. That to me is amazing. So you have three pieces in the show, and they are the Expulsion, Baby Jake's, and Bountiful Harvest. Mm-hmm. So can you talk us through? Every single one has an amazing visual story. I've never seen so many penises embroidered in a piece of work before.
Right? I feel like that could be like a special line, like on my resume, like has mastered penis embroidery, like
yes,
maybe like education.
And if that doesn't entice people to come in and see this work, then I don't know how we're going to reach them. So please tell me about those three pieces that are on our wall.
Okay. So they're all three based on, like, I'm an art history nerd, and I love old stuff. I'm particularly interested in medieval period to like right before the Renaissance. So like middle to late medieval periods. I just can't, like, I can't get enough. And then of course, like I kind of skipped the Renaissance, but I like everything after too. So I kind of sandwich that, but most of my things, like I love medieval manuscripts, like illuminated manuscripts. I love fresco. When I got the privilege to go to Italy and see like Giotto's work in person, and Masaccio in Florence, and it kind of started shifting my paradigm, because I was like, wait a minute, these stories were being told to an illiterate audience, but so all of these things are narrative. They're all telling a story. And I was like, this is powerful to me. Like I was walking through the chapel in Assisi. I believe it was the Giotto. I'm going to get this all messed up, and someone that knows art history is going to type and be like, that's not what whatever. It's in Assisi. And I was walking through and I was seeing just like this progression. I was like, this is like medieval TV. Like I'm watching these stories unfold, and it didn't immediately change the way that I made art, but it certainly down the road gave me permission to do that. And I think there's something about medieval art, for me personally, that is very free. Like they're not, they haven't quite bound themselves visually to any sort of canon yet. Mm-hmm. It's not been mathematized yet. It's not, you know, like linear perspective is kind of there, but like, meh. And so I just found like that visual language to really work for me. And also the ability to have like a spiritual realm and a physical realm portrayed together. Because that was something I noticed over and over and mm-hmm. over again in manuscripts and in like when I would look at illuminated manuscript, medieval painting, fresco, I was just like, there's multiple layers of narrative happening here. And well, that's so true. It just hit me as true. I was like, well, that's what's happening in my world. That's what's happening in my friends' lives. Like there's so many layers. And so that's kind of where I pull a lot of my permission, I guess, to mm-hmm. tell these stories the way that I do. So the first one, the Expulsion, is based on Masaccio's Expulsion. So I just kind of like ripped off Eve. I was like, she looks miserable. Like that's how I felt then. Yeah. And I do feel like these pieces that I will talk about and that I riff off of, like they're classics, like they're, and I feel like if something has stood the test of time, it's because there's a real truth in there.
Yeah.
And so like a universal truth. So when I saw that, I was like, I know that anguish. I know what that feels like. And so when I was telling this particular story in the Expulsion, I was talking about this time in my life where I thought I had created this Eden. I thought I had created this beautiful world for myself. And I was having to leave. And of course, hindsight, I can see that I had an unsustainable work schedule. I was in a really unhealthy relationship. I was not in a healthy lifestyle, like all of these things, but I was clinging so hard to those things. And so the Expulsion, when I remembered that Masaccio painting and that feeling of having to leave that life and move on to like a new way of existing, I was just like devastated. I wasn't like I was perfectly content to stay in this unhealthy lifestyle, this unhealthy relationship. Like, why am I being kicked out? And so that's why I have kind of like, there's in the image, there's like this medieval, I totally ripped it off of a manuscript. It's like this like dragon thing with like sequins, and like there's this huge like party going on in its mouth, and there's like a stripper on a horse, and like it's like a bucking bronco. I was in Dallas, so like I was just pulling symbols, like recognizable symbols that people could go, oh, that's a Dallas cowgirl, like kind of images, but then also peppering in these like medieval demons, because there was so much darkness for me at that time. It was mm-hmm. not like a happy party, and this is like a dark party. And so I'm being pushed out. And so that Masaccio piece, I was like, you know, you're in so much anguish when you're removed, but it's a mercy that you were removed from that situation. So that's that piece in a nutshell. And of course there's like swooping like angelic figures. Like there, I think it's so important to represent the good and the bad at the same mm-hmm. time, because even though the good felt bad at the time, that was the good, and the bad looked good but wasn't. And so that's that piece for me.
I'm identifying.
Right?
Yes.
And that's what I love also about telling these stories, these little episodes, because like there's nothing special about my story. Like there's nothing remarkable. I haven't accomplished anything great. There's nothing remarkable, but what the things that I feel and the experiences in relationship, especially, mm-hmm. and in personal growth and in motherhood and all these things, like those are everybody's stories. Yeah. And so I feel like if I can share mine, it opens, people are way more willing to go, oh, I have an expulsion. Yeah. Like, oh, like I have an Exodus story, you know, mm-hmm. and it's just, it opens up a conversation that I think like narrative art, you can talk about other art, but narrative art will talk to you. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to it, and why that's so important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And everything that you've said, you know, the the archetypal, the narrative, the universal. And no, it's not necessarily remarkable, but what is remarkable is that when that thread is seen as being universal, that passes through all of us. And I think that that's what your pieces are they're telling that story. And that Expulsion, we've all had that experience. Yeah. We've all had that experience.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity for people to come together and bond, like totally different people. Yeah. Like I've had, when I've shown different pieces that, you know, like I always work in this kind of narrative language. So it's kind of common throughout my entire body of work, and people, completely different generations, completely different backgrounds. They're like, yeah, like they have their own version. And so, you know, it's like a big part of it is important for me to share, but at the same time, I don't want my story to color someone else's interpretation of the piece. So that's kind of like something I wrestle with in my studio and in my practice, because I'm like, I want to tell, and it's like, but telling isn't the most effective way to communicate. like
right.
You need to have room for people to talk too.
Yeah, and your 3 pieces that are hanging on the wall downstairs, I say downstairs because I'm up above the gallery right now. As they are on the wall right now, they're not telling your story as you are right now, but they're asking the observer to fill in the blanks. So can you and not the blanks, but like fill in their narrative? You know, what they see is going to touch them in those certain places. Can you tell us briefly about the other 2 pieces?
Sure. They're not as dense as that one as far as personal meaning. So the Baby Jakes is based off of a Goya print, Capriccio number 20. It's in English, it's There They Go Plucked. And in Spanish, again, I'm going to like ruin, Ya van de plumados. So There They Go Plucked is the Capriccio that one's based off of. And that's kind of where the similarities in story end. Like, I'm not making social commentary necessarily in that piece. But that's what I thought motherhood would be like. Like, I thought, like, Jake is my partner, he's my husband, and we did not have children at that time. And it was just such a fear of mine to have kids. I did not want kids. I wanted to make art. I wanted to dance. I did not want children. No. And so like I had this idea of what motherhood and raising children would be like. And I saw this Capriccio and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be beating these things off of me with a broom. Like, get away from me, these little Jake chickens, like, go away. Yes. Like, and so like, and then like the nightmare is that there's many, like, it's not just one, there are many.
And there are several in that piece.
There are several. And then, so I started making them and I was like, Jake, this is what I think our babies are going to look like. And he was like, wow, he's like, I hope they don't look like roasted chickens with my head on them. And I'm like, no, I think that's what it's going to be like. And so that's, I took like that, again, that grounding in like a really classic, art historical reference. And I just draped in this case, anxiety on it. And then the phallic tree, that's like, so I like that's a medieval manuscript. I wrote down, I actually looked it up because I was like, which one is it? Roman de la Rosa, and it's 1325 to 1353, somewhere in there is where that picture was plucked from. And it's a margins painting, which are hilarious. Google them. Okay. Medieval illuminated manuscript margin painting, and you will just like have a field day. It's so entertaining. And so that's what I was doing, and I saw that, and my first thought was, well, that's hilarious. Like, it's like, that's so funny.
And to remind folks, this is Bountiful Harvest.
And so this is Bountiful Harvest, yes, the third piece. And so the image, for those that haven't seen it, is me, and I'm sitting there and I have this basket full of penises, and there's this huge bush that's just covered in penises. And the Jake of the Woods, my husband's character, is standing there, and he has his shovel and he's digging up the penis tree, and underneath the penis tree is our son. And so that so this whole like playing off of fertility, playing off of like my previous life where I was like, well, I'll just take this one, and then like coming into this like kind of stable relationship, which was like terrifying. And having my husband like, no, we're digging up this penis tree and there's something underneath. And like, and then there was our son. So it was like those two pieces. It was interesting, the Baby Jakes and then Bountiful Harvest in the same show, because Bountiful Harvest, I didn't know that I was pregnant when I made that, and I was just like, this is terrible. And then I found out I was pregnant with our son, and I was like, well, here we go. Like, this is the perfect depiction. Like, and I just resonated with that image because I was like, that's what's happening in my life right now. Like, and Jake is uprooting the penis tree because we're not in that world anymore. Like, we're settling into this more stable family situation.
This has been absolutely fabulous conversation. I'm going to go down and look at the pieces again with all of that background. Just fascinating. And so Courtney, I want to congratulate you again on your second place award in this year's Juried show, and encourage everyone to please come out. We are open. The gallery is open every time our building is open, and that is Wednesday through Sunday, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Any last words, Courtney, for our viewers?
No, I would encourage you. Well, no, yes, of course I have words. So I would just encourage everyone to come see this show. And enjoy all of it. It's such a beautiful range of like medium, of language, of everything, of message, everything. It's just such a rich show. And I would encourage you, if you get a chance to sit with the pieces we've been talking about, like, maybe I would invite you to meditate on your own versions of those stories.
Yes. Thank you so much, Courtney. And we look forward to seeing all of you in the gallery soon.
Thank you.
Bye.